Good morning, Christopher Shearer. Did that music double play itself, the intro?
I didn't think it was going to stop then, Gloria, to be honest.
I think Spirit or somebody was having a laugh because it sounded like there was 2 plays of it. So, well, that was something different. It's live TV. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Open Minds. This is where the weekend begins on Chris and Gloria's live chat show. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good. I'm really good. Yeah.
I'm going to ask that question.
The sun's gone down today. It was lovely yesterday, wasn't it?
You love this question, don't you? And what have you been doing, Chris? You love that question.
What have I been doing this week? I've been on Eternal Spirit as usual. I started back at work.
Well done. Good for you. Getting back out there. And you've done amazing demonstrations of mediumship. Right, we plugged you enough. That's it. All over with.
Over to you.
That's it. Over to me. Firstly, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Rosemary, Karen, Donna, Nikki, Catherine. Thank you all for joining. I've had a wonderful week. Wonderful week in the Hot Fuzz Village. I've survived another week here. Beautiful weather. Been in the garden. Also, I've started my next project on my campuses. So, been enjoying that. Sorry?
And you've had adventures with Kevin the Squirrel.
The Kevin the Squirrel antics are on video and online. Kevin and Sarah now, darling. Kevin and Sarah. Okay, that's it. Now we've eased the energy. Today, everybody, we have an amazing guest. Phillip Kinsella is, I'm going to say, a best-selling author. Today, he's going to talk with us about dealing with the aspects of the abduction program, cloning, the human soul, and the bigger question, what are we as humans? He's going to talk us through some theoretical models towards a greater understanding of where we are as a species and where we are heading.
Exciting.
Also, he'll touch upon what is our purpose, why are we here, and what are the UFOs telling us. So basically, we will have a most amazing discussion where the topic will be human consciousness and the multi-leveled experiences of alternative realities. A mouthful, I know, but Phillip, I've watched him on other interviews, and he gives such clarity and such ease for us to understand. And it's very personal to me as well, because I am an experiencer, as most of you know. So, Chris, would you let Phillip out of the naughty room, please?
The naughty room, I love it.
Hi, hello. Good morning, Gloria and Chris. How are you?
Good morning, Phillip. We're very well, thank you very much. And thank you for coming on to the show and sharing your journey with us. Chris, are we live on YouTube at the same time? Please share our links. Yep, live everywhere. Please share our links out there. Let's get it out there, especially Philip's interview today. We'd be really grateful for that. So are we ready to go? And Philip, welcome to the show. And please, where did your journey begin? Where did it begin?
It began when I was a child, but really the full extent of things that changed in my life happened when my twin brother and I, my identical twin brother and I, were 13. And we were staying with our maternal grandparents. They lived in a big 3-story high house in Middlesex, and we'd spend all of our vacation time with our grandparents. And our grandmother was psychic, not to the extent that you and all of us are, but it was a summer's evening when we'd been out with her, and we're in the back garden, and it was a beautiful day, just me, my twin, and my grandmother, and it was a clear blue sky, and we saw what we thought, first of all, was a silver balloon that was heading towards us. And we realized on closer inspection that this was no balloon, because the object was moving with intent and intelligence, so it would seem. And this object that was about the size of a football, silver in color, no markings, no sound, came over to the house, past the tree, and hovered over our grandmother's head, about roughly, it's hard to gauge, probably about 20 feet above her head. And we were so amazed and shocked by what we were seeing that we asked her, "Grandma, what's this?" And she said, "The fairies have come to take a closer look at us." And but it was so bizarre, and the object then moved towards the 2nd-story windows to a bedroom, moved up to the 3rd-story windows, and then went over the roof, and we ran into the house, and we had to run up the winding staircase up to the 1st floor and into their bedroom across the other side, and watched it disappear. And that was the talk of the family for some time. And I remembered hearing our grandmother on the phone late at night talking to another family member about the experience. So that was the starting point, or the real starting point, of a phenomena that the system we served was telling us did not exist. And I wanted to know whether or not I was lying or the system was lying. And fast forward to 1989, when we had moved to a small village called Marston Moor Tame, which is about 5 miles outside of Bedfordshire. And in the winter of 1989, I had a most bizarre experience with what people would call an abduction. The first part happened on a physical level. The second part happened on what I would call a non-physical level of integration, i.e. where I was finding myself being dragged in the early hours of the morning through solid matter, through the glass doors to the kitchen, to the conservatory. That in itself is a very long, I won't say story, because it wasn't a story, it was an event, but it's too long-winded to go into here. But nevertheless, this began to formulate within my mind about what are we dealing with, because I always assumed that UFOs happened on a very physical level of integration. And this is apparent in the viewing of a UFO. And I may say here, the last ones that we had seen have been recorded and has been analyzed. There was some film footage taken of UFOs, happened on the 9th of April 2016 at 11:15 at night. That was an amazing experience where we had 3 huge luminous white UFOs hovering so low in a triangular formation over my twin brother and myself when we come back from some police friends for a meal. And that has been documented, but there comes a level of high strangeness with this.
Absolutely.
And this is where, going back into the winter of 1989, during that period when I had what I considered to be an assault on my person, I then seriously began to investigate the phenomena back then to find out what we were dealing with, what the greys were, what consciousness is, the understanding of alternative levels of reality, and also the workings of the human brain. And this then led, shockingly, into areas of the afterlife, of soul survival, of continuation. So, you know, trying to get my head around the fact that we are dealing with something that people term the paranormal, and then working out that this so-called paranormal is a reality, but is able to infiltrate our dimension of awareness very quickly. And, you know, and then go out again with hardly any trace other than physical signs if you've been messed with, has puzzled me. And I wanted to know what this force was, where it was coming from, or a certain faction of this force. And of course, after the 1989 incident, I then found myself going to see a medium who worked for the FBI in America when my maternal grandmother had sadly passed over. And she wiped the floor with me, because at that point I was always a little bit dubious about mediums then. And that is all due to the system that we serve that tells the public that it's all a load of old rubbish. And we all, most of the people used to believe what they were being told by the system. But I found that it is anything but. And then I started to develop as a medium after the abduction. And the UFO sightings continued, not on a regular basis, but when they did happen, it was on a seemingly personal level of integration and a most shocking level of understanding. So this is why I then began to, oh, it's 11:11. I've just looked at my computer. I'm sorry, synchronicity.
I just looked too. I can see. I've just seen.
It's like, wow, that's really weird. But this is why, you know, I thought here is a guy who professes to have had an abduction, that has seen UFOs with his twin brother and members of the family, and now he talks to the dead. And I thought my reputation, such as it had been, would go straight down the pan.
But it didn't. It didn't.
Well, I was then, when I saw this medium, she actually knew, because remember back in the day, back in the 80s and the 90s, there was no real communication like the stuff that we have today. And this lady didn't know me from Adam. And she read for me, and she told me that you've had an abduction, that there were beings from another dimension. She told me also that I was a twin, and that I was at that point, what I would call a failed writer. And she said to me, your first book will be a book on mediumship. And I said, no, it's not going to be about mediumship. She said, I'm afraid it is. And of course, all those years later, she was absolutely right. But, you know, in this entanglement of different theories and experiences, I wanted to get to the root cause of what was happening, what was going on. Yeah. And this then...
Sorry, I was going to say, I mean, there's so many questions one could ask through that itself. However, it's all going to become self-explanatory. Could I just, though, take you back to, I think it was your second experience, where you will be taken through the wall?
Yeah, 1989.
1989. And what I'd like to do, it's quite relevant for now, is I have also experienced the laws of physics just like do not exist when it's intangible. However, many others today are coming out and saying very similar things, like it's a safe time to come out. Did that not? I went into the sciences after my experience to try and understand what the establishment had told us was so. My personal experience was saying it's not. And then I went into quantum physics. I just want to take you back. When that experience happened, did you go into the sciences or the quantum area? Please share.
Yes. Well, what happened was that in 1996, I had the very first time and only time I had what people would call a download as a model towards what the Greys were, because they were the ones that had been responsible for this so-called abduction, as we call them. And it was a perfect, clear model of understanding that I wrote out, and it spoke also about the soul, about the dangers of cloning, And I wrote this article up. It was called Spirits in the Material World, and it was published in a well-known magazine back then called Alien Encounters. They called it revolutionary within its speculation. Now, the abduction phenomena interested me because it appeared to work on parallels that defied physicality. And it also mirrored what I would call the near-death experience. And let me explain. When someone is being abducted, they are ostensibly being taken through solid matter. And I reasoned that these greys, what they are doing is extracting the real part of you, the essence of consciousness, what you really are, people call the soul, into their level of vibration so that total interaction is possible. And, you know, there is a level of the person losing memory, of losing time. Well, of course, because the consciousness is being removed from its normal processing of time-based reality. In a near-death experience, which most people are aware of when someone clinically dies, they report of, you know, going on a journey to what we call the other side. They meet loved ones or masters or whomever, and the communication is achieved on a mental level of processing. When the individual is returned, let's say, for instance, that individual has suffered some form of life trauma or illness, in most cases, when the soul is returned back to its physical housing, the body is brought back up to its correct level of vibration, which means it heals. And the experience, we must not forget, in a near-death experience is life-changing in most cases for the individual going through it. Now, look at the abduction phenomena. The same thing in most cases normally apply where someone is being removed from their physical housing. They are in an environment where there is no time. And what's interesting is that when people are being examined by these so-called greys or reptilians, whatever you want to call them, it's almost as if the whole experience is to be wiped so that you don't recall it. But I did recall mine for some strange reason. And it's almost as if the beings need you to be in a conscious state, an awareness, so that they may, you know, connect with you on a psychic level. Now, when they're brought back from the experience, people are left with marks. Well, of course, because if you're affecting the soul, it's still connected to a degree to the physical housing of the human body. So you'll come back with marks or sometimes implants. So I kind of thought, well, why would a species such as the greys that themselves cannot reproduce be interested in reproduction? Now, this puzzled me. One of the things that I found was that the experience was very frightening and traumatic, yet years later, I have learned so much more about the experience on a personal level. Now, let's go back. The greys themselves come across as prosaic. There are arguments about people saying they're us from the future, or they are cloned entities, or they're robots, and the list goes on. And I embrace all ideologies. I will not dismiss any of them. The danger is when you come out with something that you feel may be applicable, you will invariably be attacked. But we're used to that. Change frightens people. So what are the greys? Well, they appear to be a blank canvas of something that we are not. We as a reproductive species come in through the correct channel, the birthing channel, through the womb. And my understanding is that the soul of that individual is on an eternal cycle of experience. So they carry memories from the other side, from past lives, from those in other dimensions of reality. So you're coming in the natural process of reproduction. How that's done is still a puzzle, but we have some theories with regards to that. Now, if I cloned you, Chris and Gloria, in a laboratory, people say we're clones. Well, we are to a degree, but we are unique because we have individualism. This is what the greys seem to be interested in, remember. So if I cloned you, Chris and Gloria, in a laboratory, let's say I made 10 copies of you each. Now, you, both of you, being the, the absolute perfect original copy, came through the womb, through the birthing channel, through the birthing cycle. So my understanding is that when you die, your consciousness, or soul, for want of a better word, will return back to source with your experiences and memories that you've accumulated in this life. Your clones will only have the memory imprint of one physical life. They have no memory of past. They have no memory of future. They ostensibly are outside the laws of creation. And that is dangerous, because if we as a species began to clone humans in laboratories, their question will be there. You know, does that clone have a soul? Now, what's interesting is that my theoretical model, or part of it, because it's quite complex, the spark of awareness from your cloned copy will, I believe, not be able to gravitate back to source, to the Godhead, to the ultimate source of where we come from, and therefore may gravitate into a one mind hive consciousness that within itself is a force not to be reckoned with. And this force is able to penetrate through to our physical reality. And what are the Greys interested? They're interested in reproduction. Now, I met Dr. David Jacobs in America many years ago, and his thesis is that the aliens are here. I don't doubt that. They're walking among us. I don't doubt that. And that they want to take over the world. Questionable, but there again, we cannot denounce anything. Everything must be, you know, brought into a careful form of analysis. But the Greys are interested in human reproduction, as though they need a female and a male with part of them to create a hybrid. And when the hybrid is developed, and I didn't see any hybrids on board when I had my experience, I must stress that. When the hybrid is developed, it is then the female, the human female, is brought on to teach the hybrid emotions, love. And my brother also brought out the question of the hybrid normally wants to smell the human, because, you know, if a dog smells a human, it will then notice the smell of that human and be connected with that human for life. So it appeared that the Greys, in their stagnant form of cloning, have perhaps cancelled themselves out of creation and are therefore intent in replicating themselves into a new biosphere where their spark of cloned consciousness, or one spark of awareness, enters the physical host, the biological host, on different levels of reality, and thus when they grow, hopefully will slingshot them back to their creator. Now, Kathleen Marden, the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, did make me laugh when she said that there could be a rogue group of Greys. I always have this idea of these cowboy Greys going around being, excuse my French, badasses. But the question of this is quite interesting, because as human beings, we ourselves are so removed from the rest of nature, it is staggering. If we look at nature and all life on this planet, which is absolutely beautiful and wonderful, cannot and will not advance. Yet we as a human species have been able to advance. And, you know, not digressing here from the abduction phenomena, because it's a very lengthy process of explanation, but let's consider ourselves as humans to answer the question of the soul. Why is it that as a species, our genesis is hidden? If you look into science, as it were, you will find within history that we continuously are stumped into the laws of our creation. We're giving a Sunday school version that we were created by God and that Adam and Eve was responsible, and most people buy it. Then we have the other side of the Darwinian thought that we were evolved from apes, but they can't find the model of what began the process of our creation. Now, it could be possible, theoretically speaking, that an extraterrestrial species, perhaps not the Greys, had somehow infused part of them with the hominid and thus created the Homo sapiens sapien, as it were. So, you know, we can see what I'm saying here very gently is that the public, the good public, have been hoodwinked into the understanding that everything is just all an accident, that UFOs do not exist, that there is no life after death, that we are just the product of chaos, and that when we eventually expire, consciousness is obliterated. There is no more you. But many of us, like your good selves, and many of the good people on this planet, understand that we have been lied to, especially with the UFO phenomena. And going back again to the aspect of interdimensional communication, I then wanted to find out how it was that such spectres as the Greys, and not all of them are bad. I'm not saying they're bad. They could be good. You know, we've got to look at both ways here. We are good, we are bad as humans. The same with other life forms or intelligences or other interdimensional levels of reality that exist on multiple levels of, conscious awareness. I kept thinking, why is it that the Greys and the abduction phenomena comes in and goes out very quickly, as though we are chasing shadows? And this led me then into the understanding that I felt perhaps, are they entering or perhaps hijacking forcibly into our psychic system? Let me explain. My understanding of consciousness is that if you have your mobile phone, that is a physical device that's been designed to collect a signal that we can't see. When you get your phone, that signal is unique to you. So if we take the human body and consciousness, my understanding is that consciousness operates separately from the biological housing. It needs this instrument to connect with, rather like the information coming through to your mobile phone that we can't see or understand until the information is broken down into the mechanism to present it in a language that we can then understand. But we can't see these signals. And we take it for granted that they are emanating from a Mars somewhere, and they're all around us, and we can't see them. So my idea on a romanticized level is that consciousness is all around us. And perhaps when the biological form in the physical sense evolves, an aspect of that consciousness links in to the physical housing and develops through the processing of this material. So we are recording mechanisms through birth to death. We are recording our experiences and memories, even if you suffer from some form of neurological dysfunctionality. So that all these memories are being processed, and because we can't stop to appreciate a moment because it's gone, we can only go back in our mind to link with it.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that when we die, physically die, consciousness is removed from its very low level of awareness and enters a state of complete unity of self, of what that consciousness was in its primary state of origin, which is eternal. So I'm thinking to myself that other intelligences have perhaps found a way of interlinking into you and becoming manifest into your reality. Because a lot of the UFO experiences, when we report them, they come with a level of high strangeness where time seems to stand still on most occasions, where the energy and atmosphere seems to change. And and sometimes the person can't quite recall all of the events, although they're able to see the UFO coming in or whatever it is. And then there is a feeling of missing time.
Yes,
So I believe that perhaps that there are alternative levels or dimensions of awareness that are able to interact with us on a subconscious level and conscious level. And they come in this way. And of course, it's real to you. It's real in every sense of the word because they are connecting with you, like a spirit person connecting with you from the other side.
I was just going to say that. You did it. I was just going to say that.
Like a medium. All that's happening here is that the medium is opening their consciousness to another level of awareness and interpreting or downloading the information and passing what are getting through from that dimension. So it could be that most of these abductions are, the strange thing is clandestine, secret and hidden away, as though these spectres don't want you to know about them. And please, some people have said, oh, it's because there's a universal law. Well, to prevent them from doing that, well, most of them have already broken that law because they're coming in anyway.
They're coming in anyway, yes, absolutely. I mean, I did say earlier on, if me and Chris have questions, you being the psychic, your medium, you're going to answer it, and you did. I was going to give the analogy, it's the same experience in mediumship with spirit. And how advanced you go with mediumship into the next dimension, spirit. There's remote viewing.
Oh, yes.
trance medium.
Yes.
It's I see it as a parallel. It's just a different dimension, a higher dimension next door than just a spirit. So you took my question away, Philip, and I knew you would because you're a medium.
Yeah.
How do you, now you've got this understanding from, you know, the first abduction, the experiences of you and your brother Ronald and your grandma, how is your understanding now? I'm going to put you on the line. I'm going to ask you, you know, what you've sort of come up with through today is why?
Yes.
Why are we here? Why is this happening? Where are we going?
Yeah.
Why are we connecting?
Yeah.
You know, do you?
Yeah.
I mean, from your truth and your perspective, please share with us.
Of course, I will try. And of course, it is my truth and my perspective. I'm a little bit like my maternal grandfather. He was very much a solid man and very honest and black and white. And sometimes I can be a little bit strict in my analogy of things. But my understanding is that I could never understand the process of death. It scared the hell out of me. It didn't make any sense. And the experiences that most of us go through perhaps are trying to make us aware that, you know, this is not the beginning, middle, and end. I wanted to find out about God, if I may use that word, or the omnipresent energy of what we represent, really, truly represent. My understanding is that perhaps this process of creation is developed so that we come into this biological form with amnesia to a degree, so that we can create a new blueprint of creation of memories and experiences that when we die is filtered back to the one, the Godhead, to further the expansion of creation. From millions and billions of souls going through varied experiences and bringing this information back to the source to expand upon the process of creation. And this then also affords us the ability to be individual and unique souls on what we call the other side. Now, I do know there's another side because I have seen it. And I have experienced that myself, and it is nothing less than truly astounding. But my understanding is that perhaps the process of creation is to expand upon experience, and that the Godhead, that we are all part of that force. When people talk of God, perhaps we are all part of that experience, whether positive or negative, because we are in a temporary biological body that will expire. That is the facts. And when we return back to the other side, perhaps this process of creation is so incredible that the one is learning more about itself through the extension of us, and that we're all connected, however good, however bad. But then, of course, you get into some deep waters with people saying, well, what about hell and all these other places? And that's a very touchy subject that we have to be very, very careful about. But I can only tell you that there are other, or appear to be other, levels of reality. For instance, the Greys themselves, not all of them, because there are different parts to human beings, different, levels of humanity. But there are some perhaps that come from very different dimensions of awareness and have found us and are curious, are like, well, what is this? They're so different from us. Why are they so different from us? And of course, we would be the same with nature. If we came across a new species, we're like, my goodness me, let's have a look at this. We need to examine this. So I believe that through the multiple levels of reality and creation that we're going through, we're expanding upon the process of reality. And I believe also when I say to you that we do have what I call a soul, and again, people will correct me and say consciousness is a soul, or soul is different from consciousness. But my understanding is consciousness is awareness of self. And if you have awareness of self, that to me is the soul, the energy signature of what you represent. They come in light forms around mediums when they're reading for people, or they're seen without people being around. But one of the things that I really found fascinating was the memory recall of the other side. And if I may just elaborate here.
Yes, do.
I had an experience when I was younger where I almost drowned. And I think what happened was that I saw the other side. But this other experience I had about a month ago, I did say to a producer friend of mine, I couldn't wait to tell him. I was just laying down. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I was not asleep. I couldn't sleep. I closed my eyes, and immediately my body went into shock, and I mean shock, because I saw myself. People call it heaven, although it wasn't told to me that this is heaven. It felt like that. You know, people say the other side. We don't know because no one's told you it. That's what it's called. Yeah. But I found myself in a geographical location that I recalled and remembered, and it was like going home. It was incredible. It was the best feeling I've ever had in my life. I wanted to get up in the morning afterwards and phone everyone at past 1 o'clock in the morning to say, it's okay, don't worry, there's another side. You survived the state of death. But what was amazing was that the memory had like that, and it was like I remembered where I was, where I'd come from, and while the experience was happening, I could see the geographical location. It was so beautiful. I remembered where I was, and then all of a sudden it seemed to dissipate, as though I could not hold on. I was just trying to grasp the residue of what I just experienced. And I think what happens is this. I think that consciousness is filtering reality through within a recording level of what we're experiencing, but the higher part of our memories are stored in the higher mind, and I think sometimes they may be able to slip through the net of normal processing and overwhelm the individual, because it's like, and then bring them back in again, recorrect them, because we're in this space and this time now. So that opened for me through my ignorance when I was younger. And I must admit, I was very ignorant and very, taunting of a lot of the experiences. Now has brought me to an awareness that there are multiple levels of dimensions of awareness, that the human brain is the conduit, is the receiver and transmitter for these alternative levels of awareness, whether remote viewing, the extension of the psyche beyond the physical matrix, whether clairvoyance, whether healing, whether all of these things that we consider to be quote unquote paranormal are quite normal. It's just that the system that we serve has programmed us to believe that there is no such things as these things. And what happens when we're born is that from the age to about from 1, I'll say 0 in the womb, 1 to 7, it's children see the spirit people, they play with them, they call them their ghost friends or whatever. And then, of course, what happens is that the program of reality starts to step in. And, of course, what we understand as reality is then forced into our ability to, conduct ourselves within this world. And then those other elements are shut down. But most people are able to train their mind to open up as a channel, as it were. Okay, there are some people who open up too much and everything they see and feel is spirit, and some people are narrow their field of conscious awareness, narrow-minded, which means nothing will get through. So I stay within the very fine line of walking. I'm not a scientist, but my mind works in a way where I'm quite, theoretical in my approach. But yes, there are definitely alternative levels of reality. We are incredible beings that have been taught that we are not, and this is damaging to the individual. Damaging. And
I mean, I actually do resonate, and I know Chris does too, because me and Chris have many discussions over this, don't we, Chris? I have, ever so often I try and find ways to articulate something that seems so paradoxical. And I must say that you've elegantly done that with great clarity.
Fascinating.
My recent talking with Chris and talking with others, connecting, I look at it as, you give the analogy of the phone earlier on. I go like, every time this happens, whether it's a near-death experience, whether like Chris channels, he channels, when it happens and you get this expansion, you're home and you're there and you come back, I feel like it's like, like you get online, when you go online, I call it connect. We're connected. In the old days, it was dial-up to get to the internet. I'm old enough to remember, Chris, I don't know if you are, but I know Philip is. and it was dial-up, and it's like, connect, and then you get disconnected. We're in the dial-up mode, and we get in. So I do resonate. I resonate. Chris, was you going to say something? Sorry.
I just find it so interesting, fascinating, Philip. It really is.
Well, yeah. You know, I didn't want to be a medium. It wasn't something I wanted to do. I think all of us, when we really look at our lives, we find that it is preordained to a degree. We have some form of free will, like a computer game which is manufactured and built. You have the platform, and there you come on, and you have free will to go left or right. Unfortunately, in real life, you don't have the option of starting again. So I believe that we create a part of our reality, but I think and believe that there is some kind of blueprint that we can muck up along the way. But one of the things I will tell all of your listeners, however negative that they feel about this, or enlightened that they get from this, which is wonderful. I'm a person who is, if I respect anyone's opinion, but we as human beings are literally gods in the making. Now, going back into the genus of our creation, it is apparent that there was some form of, dare I say it, extraterrestrial intervention, because when you go back into the biblical texts and even further into antediluvian texts, you will find that there seems to be a very delicate scientific terminology of our genus, and that it seems that some form of genetic gene splicing experiment was taking place in order to create the hominid man. Now, through our genes, we find that we are flawed in some areas, or certain signaling within the genetic structure has been switched off. So I think in some ways that's a good way, because I think if you were physically immortal and you didn't like the look of yourself, you'd have problems. Seriously. I mean, I wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and think, I have a problem.
That would be me.
But we are brilliant, and we are unfortunately hampered by a system. This is the really nasty part, where the system that we serve that controls is you're beginning to, and this is no conspiracy, because conspiracy is merely a psychological weapon created to turn the finger of doubt upon the inquiring mind. Now, we are programmed, and yet you and I, Chris and many others, are deprogramming ourselves and reprogramming ourselves to a new level of understanding. And it is most fascinating within its content, because I find myself reading lots of literature, even if it's ancient old literature, new literature. Okay, there are some things we can accept and some things that we can't, but remember, that's your personal journey. And this is the other thing. This is the other thing. I must make it clear to your audience, is that we pigeonhole subjects into a box and we say that's what it is. But the abduction phenomena, this is the other thing, going back to the UFO field of investigations. With the viewing of the craft and or the objects or whatever they are, there is a pattern towards this. But then there is a deeper personal link on a psychic level of psychological integration that is unique and personal to the experiencer going through it. And it could be that the person does not have the language necessary to fully interpret what's going on, and that it comes through in the way that you can process this through your mind. So my brother has always said, we're not seeing the phenomena for what it really represents, because we feel that there is another aspect to this that we can't quite understand. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, like all things, there are your good, your bad, and your ugly. So I believe that by pigeonholing things in boxes is a big mistake, because this is where people say UFOs, psychic phenomena, near-death experience, remote viewing. There are connections, and those connections are linked within the cerebral area, which is the transmitter, the processor, the receiver. This is the instrument that governs reality. This governs your reality. But unfortunately in life, we are overwhelmed by a lot of other people who will tell you it as it is. They don't have room for their understanding of what they consider reality. But you know what? When people are on the last stages of their passing, God love them, they seem to submit. Even if they were the most negative believer in the world, they're submitting. And every person, every soul on this planet returns back to source. Now, I'm not going to go down that road with the lower levels or what happens here or what happens there, because we have an idea, but I can only speak from experience. There is another side. And also, did you know the author C.S. Lewis had moments of what he called joy, and one of his biographers realized that he was having the same experience as what you and Chris go through and I go through, where he would be overwhelmed with this sense of reality that seemed to transport him to another world, and it was so real, and then he came back. Unfortunately, Professor Clive Staples Lewis became disillusioned because he could never quite understand them. But I think what was occurring was that occasionally these other memories would seep through the normal net of processing and overwhelm the individual like deja vu, and then recorrect itself back again. But going back to the UFOs, they come in on a stronger level of integration.
Also, I mean, we know Tesla said he was from Venus. Tesla. You know, we know there's many. You've got Einstein. What would happen to him when he got the mathematical equation? And like you've just said, what happens is when whatever it is that is happening happens, it evolves the singularity of this consciousness. And then it evolves the singularity of Chris's consciousness, your consciousness. Then we start the collective. And for me, from my perspective, that is the evolution of consciousness going online. However, we just go, we dial up, we're in, we're off again, and we're back to being egotistic. Oh, my life is so sad and suffering. And then, no, we're not. And it's a process. There comes a point.
And then it seems to get repeated, doesn't it?
Sorry, Chris?
It seems to get repeated as well. And you get the old philosophers, for example, and then so on in future terms. Then say the same thing, but not have studied it, not have heard of it.
Brilliant. Yes, good one. Yes.
Well, that's why perhaps all of us find it difficult sometimes to live in this world, because we are considered, you know, not as much today, but certainly back in the 80s and 90s, considered freaks. And you know, you are trying to express yourself and telling people that, you know, there are alternative levels of reality, that we must explore this. And it's almost like you're fighting through this normality, which I find very boring and tiresome now, because we have to live in a world. I mean, you know, going shopping, for instance, is such an amazing experience where you see people walking around, and it's like, and I do joke with some people, and sorry, I'm not being rude, it's like watching The Walking Dead. I sometimes think to myself, you know, you want to say to people, look, what there is more to this. And I think that there are certain souls who we're all unique, we're all special, we're all connected, but I think certain souls are beginning to activate and switch on. And
going online.
We can transform, well, if there's any hope, the levels of destruction which is happening on this beautiful planet. But unfortunately, the powers that be, it's all about money, about control, about power, about subjugation, and the misery and degradation of the things that go on here causes me to become very upset sometimes, because there's nothing you can do. But there's one thing that I do know, that all those souls that have preceded us into what we call the light on the other side, they are very much aware of what's going on. They've done their job, they've done they've walked their path, and you, as the light, as the soul, as the source, are your creator, and you view your world as beautifully as you can, and let no person, no one interfere with your belief or your dreams or your desires. And this is another thing I have to say very quickly. For those out there who have a dream, I say to you, keep going. It took my brother and I 20 years to find publishers for our books. 20 years to find publishers. So, you know, and we, even though the stages of wanting to give up, and you know, whatever, I never had that feeling. I kind of like felt a bit of me saying I want to give up. It's the same with the understanding of the psychic phenomena. It is a most fascinating subject, a most interesting. And I have also seen the other side on 2 occasions, and I saw a friend of mine who had died. After he died of cancer, I asked him if he would show himself to me, and he did just that, and it was quite shocking. So I think, very shocking.
I mean, I look at I love every individual journey when our guests come on the show, and what I found is, being an experiencer from abductions and even the most recent one, I used to be fascinated with the greys. I have focused on the greys and all the science and that. I have now become aware, due to my interaction with other dimensional beings, I'm fascinated with the human experience. I'm now fascinated with Earth, what I'm doing. Oh my God, it's like being a child again. I took my attention that was external. I have to give some accreditation to the other dimensional beings for this, because without them clicking me online, and the spirit world through mediumship, the same thing, taking us down that path, I now am excited to find out more about the human experience and listening to other humans. Please tell me your experience. What was your journey?
Yes.
And then I find there is a collective census.
Yes,
and
absolutely. Yes.
It's that, but that's my analogy on all of this, from my induction in brackets.
And, you know, the greys could be our creators. They could be, you know, we don't know. The thing is, we can only assume and bring theories to the table. And even if people reject those theoretical ideas, that is perfectly fine. And again, as I said, you know, we are dealing with a multifaceted, multidimensional force that operates on different levels of awareness. And it appears to be happening on a personal level of psychic integration. So again, you know, the experience is unique to you as the individual, and everyone wants you to make it fit into their model or their paradigm of thought or whatever it is. But, you know, at the end of the day, through the continuous research and, you know, by applying more constructs to the models that we create, it is important that we have some idea of what we may be dealing with on an empirical level of conscious awareness. And it's fascinating because it proves to me that we are more than physical flesh and blood creatures with a sell-by date.
No,
definitely.
I agree. I mean, me and Chris have our discussions, and one that keeps coming up, isn't it, Chris, where you say we are conscious beings having a physical experience.
Yes.
And then you've got the one saying, I'm a human being having a spiritual experience. And when me and Chris have these discussions, someone will say, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, but they haven't used any discernment. What does it mean? If you introspection, what does it mean to be and then the gap comes, and then you realize you can have an intellectual understanding. However, an experiential understanding is needed, which you cannot interpret. I can't get that word out. It's a case of, I'm not the human being I've told I was. I'm not this useless, or we say stupid. The belief systems I have been conditioned and programmed in, whether it's from school, parents, society, the collective, whatever country you live in. We live in the United Kingdom, so we have like a Christian base, laws, so to speak. And I think when you start unpicking, or the word I use is deconstructing the human being, know what you're not, then you can find out who you are. And I don't know, it's my theory, when that process is in play, then maybe a greater understanding will come, well, why are we here? What is our connection to the other dimensional beings? But I think only by deconstructing the human being.
Yes, and you know, you have the power. You have the. It always reminds me of a scene from one of the Star Wars films, and I know that Darth Vader was evil, but let me just give an example where he submitted his power to greater force when he used to kneel before the Emperor. And I think when we kneel before the greater reality of what we consider to be the God force of all, that is most amazing and humbling experience, that we can be part of something brilliant and absolutely beautiful, that we can transform the way we think and we feel and the way we construct our ideas. And you can see this war, this mental war occurring now, and even more so within current times, of this total mental subjugation. We will not have it. You know, even as individuals, that we know that there is a lot more that we need to bring to the attention of the public, those willing to understand, not force it down their throats, but show them that you are much more than just the physical construct of a material existence, that you have consciousness, that you are part of something that's loved, that is divine within nature and within the ultimate connection of universal energy. And I always say to people, if you don't believe, just look up in space. What is that? Where does it end? The beauty, the majesty of that will tell the individual to stop and collect their thoughts for a moment and just think about that. I think that is beautiful.
Chris, I don't know about you. I mean, I'm like...
I'm just going to ask a quick question. Don't children have reincarnated into this experience, and they've talked about past lives and body. Is it going to be, I mean, would you have a viewpoint on it, but is it one day they're going to come back, reincarnate and say, well, I was a grey, my mum was this, and I lived on this planet? And
well, I'll tell you one thing. It would not surprise me to know or feel that we have existed in other dimensions of reality. The human experience is not the only reality. That is something I do understand. So it would be quite normal for a grey to believe in itself as a grey, whether cloned or not. It is a spark of awareness. Even for those that have perhaps counted themselves out of creation, they want to be part of creation. So it wouldn't surprise me at all, no.
Brilliant question. Brilliant question, Chris. Brilliant. I like that. You know, I wouldn't like to be I'm so glad I've had my children. I wouldn't like to be the first mother.
Let me just find the seam. I'll just find the seam.
It's like, no, get that out of my head. Thank you very much. Chris, do you have, I mean, it's just mind blowing what Philip said. Oh it would go on for hours. However, I
think it's so interesting, and you've covered such detail, which we have to thank you for. What are you working on now, Philip? Where's Philip going now?
Well, I have to thank both you, Chris and Gloria, for inviting me on your wonderful program, and I'm very honored, even if it helps. I know that most people won't swallow what we speak about, and I understand that. I'm quite good with that now. I'm like, okay, I'll agree with you, shake your hands, but I still believe in what I believe in. I'm working on 2 new books at the moment, 2 new UFO books at the moment. So hopefully one of them will be finished in about 2 years' time, maybe a little bit less, because it does take a while to write a book. It's not something that's a walk in the park. And I'm working on another project which is more personal for me, about a lot more explanation of experiences that our family, and also going into theoretical content. So I always say we're all important, all brilliant souls. Believe in yourself. At least do that. Love yourself and believe in yourself.
Well, Chris, I mean, it's got to be, down the line at some point, or we need to get Philip back on the show. I mean, it's just so educational. You can just feel your awareness go, I never thought of that. I never thought of that. And I think these conversations, a fresh conversation is needed regularly now. We need to keep having these public conversations. If it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Take away from today to our audience anything that does resonate with you, and start your own journey. Believe in your own truth, your own path, your own singularity. And I will say, start deconstructing yourself. Don't go out there. And when you start thinking, you realizing, I'm not that. That's a belief. That's a belief. And then the hidden history, the hidden genesis of us will then become apparent to ourselves as an individual.
I am fascinated with all aspects of it, and I will go into it and examine it. I am fascinated. It's something that's in my blood.
Yes. Well, thank you once again, Philip.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
An absolute honor. And we're now going to send you to the naughty room. We'll be with you in a minute. Off to the naughty room. Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you very much. So much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Chris.
Wow.
Wasn't that just wow?
I could have sat and listened all day.
Yeah. Cancel everything. Just listen to Philip. I mean, I said before, didn't I? Every time I try to construct a rational question, Philip that's because he's a medium, obviously. He knew the connection. He knew, and it was wonderful. Everything was on.
Amazing experiences as well.
Oh my goodness. And it was nice, and I'm sure our audience will be pleased as well. You know, we hear so many stories of abduction and the negative connotation. Yeah. I have to say, I am an experiencer. I've never had one negative thing out of anything. That's my truth. It's really nice that a discussion can be had live on this subject.
And well explained as well, so you can understand it.
And none of us, the three of us, are not going to be burnt at the stake.
Not yet.
Not yet. It could come, but you know what? You know what I always say when people have a judgment of me, and I can't say it live online, but basically go over the bridge, go to China, or go wherever you want to go, and it's none of my business what you think about me. However, beautiful show. Next week, Chris, we have an absolute, don't we, trailblazer in psychic detection. I've got my auto cue here, guys. Just pulling up my auto cue. We have Nancy Meyer, who is a psychic detective, a teacher. I mean, everything all in one. I followed this wonderful soul for years. She works in America, and she has worked in America. It must be 36, she'll correct me, 37 years in psychic detection, working with law enforcement. She is not only an astounding medium and psychic, but the law enforcement taught her to be a detective. So she combined the two gifts together. And she is still to this day the trailblazer in psychic detection work. She's worked on a lot of cases she can't speak about, but she will give us some insight of her journey, how it worked, and inspire the psychics today that are just touching into this film. She is amazing, and she, to me, is a trailblazer, and it will be an absolute honor to have her on the show. And that's Nancy Meyer next week. So, Chris, are we ready? What are you doing tonight? Hold on, Chris. What are you doing tonight? Come on, what are you doing tonight?
I'm at Grimsby Spiritualist Church, virtual, not literal, doing a demonstration.
I hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I'm sure you being a powerhouse of a medium, it's going to be amazing. So, are we ready? I always love this bit. Are you ready? Should we do it? And it's good night from him.
Good night from her.
And thank you, everybody, for joining the show today. And we'll see you next Saturday. Bye for now, guys. Bye. Thank you.